But we have live footage coming in from Kintex ahead of the Korea-Africa Summit. We have our Korean hosts greeting the African delegations as they make their way into the venue of the summit to hold talks which begin on this Tuesday morning. For those of you tuning in right now, we are bringing you live coverage of the scenes from the venue of the first Korea-Africa Summit. The meeting itself is scheduled to take place later on this Tuesday morning. That would be in a few minutes, in about an hour or so. The meeting is taking place at Kintex, the Korea International Exhibition Center, located in Goyang City in Gyeonggi-do Province. Out of the 55 African Union member states, 48 nations are partaking in the Korea-Africa Summit, and out of the 48, 25 heads of state are here to take part in the summit talks in person. Now, on the sidelines of the multilateral meeting, President Yoon Suk-yeol is also hosting bilateral talks with his counterparts from these 25 nations. Right, we have the delegation from South Africa arriving, the ambassador. The order of the arrival of the delegations has not been disclosed.
You're the ambassador in the Congo?
Yes.
The Congo?
Now, South Africa, as our Professor Kim Min-kyung here in the studio mentioned, is one country with great economic potential, of course, one that South Korea also seeks to forge greater economic ties with. Right then, as we wait for the next delegation to arrive, perhaps we'll continue with our discussion.
Global supply chains and the emergence of value alliances and protectionist measures. As a country heavily reliant on external sources, Korea encounters obstacles in securing essential minerals crucial for its renewable energy sector, electric vehicles, energy transition, and carbon neutrality objectives. Africa, boasting abundant reserves of these critical minerals, offers Korea a strategic opportunity to stabilize its supply chains. Furthermore, the summit serves as a platform to deepen engagement with Africa's 1.4 billion population, tackling interconnected issues such as security, development, climate change, and food security, increasingly recognized as global priorities. As bolstering its presence in Africa, Korea can secure markets and resources, obtain international support, and take the lead on critical matters such as renewable energy investment, piracy prevention, and refugee crisis. The Korea-Africa Summit asserts its influence and forges partnerships with the continent, assuring long-term stability and growth amid a swiftly evolving global landscape.
Right. Now, as for those of you just tuning in to Arirang today, we are bringing you live coverage of the arriving delegations to the Korea-Africa Summit, the first one of its kind. The summit itself is taking place on this Tuesday morning at Kintex in Goyang City, Gyeonggi-do Province. Meanwhile, Stephen, some pundits claim Korea's engagement with Africa needs to be centered on empowering people in the continent. What are your thoughts?
It's definitely right. By 2050, 1 in 4 people globally and 1 in 3 youth will be from Africa continent. So Africa's growing talent and potential make it increasingly influential to the world. So Korea's advantage lies in strengthening human capacity through education and fostering exchange. We must approach this with mutual empowerment and learning, not as a provider. A top-down approach in education can seem patronizing and have negative effect. Instead, we need a horizontal approach in our programs. By fostering mutual learning and empowerment, both countries can teach and learn from each other, creating balanced and effective cooperation.
Right. Does the Africa Insight seek to perhaps create a bridge between those interested in learning about Africa or learning about Korea?
Yes, that's true. We found that there are a lot of misconception and indifference. So people consider Africa as a one negative general concept. And there is lack of effort to learn about each different cultures and historical background of the African countries. So that's why Africa Insight is trying to fostering a better understanding through the educational program and the cultural activities or campaigns, sometimes against the discrimination or negative remark.
Right, indeed. And of course, trying to create a better understanding between the peoples of the two parties is one objective of the Korea-Africa Summit. Now, according to some pundits, the connection between Korea and its African counterparts on 5 main fronts. The first one being strengthening partnerships, enhancing cooperation in various sectors, including trade, investment, infrastructure, and technology transfer. The second on promoting sustainable development by supporting African countries in nurturing economic sustainability. And the third, as Stephen mentioned here in the studio, encouraging people-to-people connection by facilitating cultural exchanges and educational programs, of course. Another agenda among members of the Korea-Africa Summit is the addressing of global challenges, collaborating on issues such as climate change, peace, security, health, as well as poverty. A final agenda would be the enhancing of diplomatic ties by building stronger political relationships and promoting mutual understanding and respect between Korea and Africa. That being said, Professor Kim, staying with Korea's contributions to Africa then, to what extent can Korea effectively share its economic growth strategy with its counterparts in Africa?
Sierra Leone is one of the African countries that has drawn inspiration from Korea's development model, but it's not just alone. Many other African countries also see Korea's strategies as useful for their own development goals. However, to be honest, it's worth noting that not all African diplomats and policymakers share this perspective. While some recognize Korea's development experience as beneficial, others raise concerns about its applicability to Africa's distinct cultural, societal, and environmental context. Moreover, given the dynamic nature of the global economy, there's ongoing debate about how well Korea's approach aligns with Africa's current challenges and priorities.
And personally, Professor Kim, what are your thoughts about our strategy aligning better with the needs of Africa? Surely we need to tailor it to fit the needs of the people there then?
Yeah, surely. There's many aspects or areas we can cooperate with Africa. With using our strength in technologies and we also have similar experiences, historical experiences with many African countries. Like we experienced colonization and civil war, and also dictatorship, authoritarian regime. So we sympathize with many African countries, and they also want to reflect our model into their development models. So we have been neglecting the continent of Africa so far, but now it's the beginning, new beginning. We can cooperate and put more efforts to have better cordial relationship with African countries.
Right, for sure. Meanwhile, Stephen, what would you say has been the impact of soft diplomacy, this of course including Korean entertainment as well as the sport, taekwondo, on promoting ties between South Korea and Africa?
Yeah, I can definitely see the increase of the interest to the K contents from Africa continent. So reflecting on my time back in Senegal, although it's a decade ago, I recall how popular events like the Ambassadors Cup Taekwondo tournament and Taekwondo demonstration by the professional masters of Taekwondo, whole village people, whole people in the city, they gather to watch that demonstration. And more recently, during my work to promoting the understanding between Korea and Kenya, I found that the Sejong institution in Kenyatta University, they really love the K-pop and K-drama, so they even make a fan club for that, and they copy the dance of the K-pop and K-dramas. So given that Korea has been relatively late in strengthening its cooperation with Africa and doesn't have the same extension like a strong historical tie or large-scale investment as some other countries, we should actively leverage our soft power, which hold significant appeal and value in African nations nowadays. So, however, it is also crucial to be cautioned not to fall into cultural superiority. While promoting our culture with pride, we should also show interest in learning about African cultures, because there are 55 countries in African continent. For example, Nigeria's media country industry known as Nollywood, producing over 1,000 pieces of contents annually, and it's available on various platforms nowadays. Additionally, Afrobeats music and dance are extremely popular and trending in the world. So by approaching cultural exchange from a mutual and horizontal perspective, showing interest and learning from their culture as much as we promote ours, we can create a more profound and effective soft power influence, I think.
Right, for sure. And I don't think I asked you this earlier, but when were you in Senegal?
Yeah.
Because we only spoke about you being in Tanzania. When did you travel to Senegal, and how long were you there for?
It was back in late 2010 to early 2013. It's more than 2 years and a few months. So I stayed a very far from the capital city, 6 hours from, in a very small town. I taught a future teacher of the Senegal on IT, skills. So it was really also another good memory of my life. I learned so many different things, but the interesting thing is like Tanzania, Senegal has also very similar kind of culture. They are the Teranga, the country of Teranga, and Teranga means the hospitality, welcome, living together. You are my brother and sister. So this whole different, area of African East and West, but I found this commonality. So that's the touching point for me.
And when you were in Senegal at that particular time, were they much aware about Korean culture?
Not really. So people usually asking, are you a Chinese? And then are you a Japan? And then when I say I'm from Korea, they said, I'm from the North Korea, so you are Kim's family, like that. Because especially Senegal, they have a big stage it's called, Africa's Renaissance. So that people have, better aware about the North Korea. Somehow media is always covering about North Korea things. So but nowadays I can see the, whole different reputation for South Korea. Those friends back in 10 years ago, they contacted me, like, I watched this, film from the, Parasite, or, some, famous drama from the, some media. It's from Korea, right? So I really feel now this soft power reaching out even to the that far Western African country.
I would have to agree with you. Just a while back, we had a guest from Nigeria, and she spoke about how her friends had a BTS meeting in Nigeria recently.
True.
Professor Kim, speaking as a scholar, how effective has Korea's soft diplomacy been in engaging its global partners over the recent years?
It's a difficult question.
It really is.
Korea's efforts in soft diplomacy across Africa have actually encountered some challenges, despite the Korean government's clear focus on projecting a robust image of soft power through public diplomacy as a primary tool for global leadership. But in Africa, while Korea's trade volume with Africa remains tiny, like modest at 1.9%, and only a small fraction, 0.03% of respondents in the one of the biggest public opinion survey institute, which is Afrobarometer. In this survey, only 0.03% of the population regarded Korea as a development model. So there are notable, even though there are notable strengths that Korea has capitalized on this. So these strengths includes the deployment of missionaries. I think we still have strength that includes the deployment of missionaries, NGOs, and other civil society organizations actually operating in the continent, as well as the positive image fostered through Korea's cultural experts and scientific achievements. However, it's crucial to acknowledge that just mere interpersonal interactions or favorable perceptions of Korean culture alone might not significantly sway public attitudes towards diplomatic policies. So what we need is a more comprehensive and systematic strategic approach to effectively mold Korea's soft power influence in Africa and beyond.
Right, and speaking about soft power, Professor Kim, with regard to the African studies provided at your university, what does your course cover? Are we talking about the history of Africa or the culture of Africa? What aspects of the course does African studies cover here in Korea?
We cover almost all the areas.
And what are students most interested in?
Actually, the Department of African Studies started as a language department. So we focused on like Kiswahili, Zulu in Southern Africa, and Hausa in West Africa. But it has expanded to various areas covering social sciences and cultural studies. So yeah, as far as the instructors can cover, we are covering many different courses. So personally, I teach political economy of West Africa, East Africa, and yeah, so many, also international relations. As a political scientist, I teach those courses.
Right, I see, good to know. Well, for those of you who are tuning in right now, we're bringing you live coverage of the greetings taking place at the venue of the first Korea-Africa Summit, which is set to take place at Kintex. We have images of Kintex and of the African delegations arriving to the venue as we speak here in the studio. Now, according to the government here, Africa, it's the continent of the future, with 60% of the population under the age of 25. And given the inauguration of the African Continental Free Trade Area in 2019, Africa is rapidly evolving into a vast single market with a population of 1.4 billion and a GDP of 3.4 trillion US dollars. This is, of course, according to the South Korean government. Meanwhile, Korea itself has endured a dark history of colonization, which is something that Professor Kim Eun-kyung here in the studio mentioned, as well as, of course, the Korean War to ensure unprecedented economic growth, which is often referred to as the miracle on the Han River. Now, Korea has transformed from being a beneficiary of international aid to becoming a donor country, seeking to contribute to the well-being of the international community, and that, of course, would include the continent of Africa. The future that Korea and Africa seek to shape together is in line with Korea's quest of becoming a global pivotal state, as mentioned by our panelists in the studio today, contributing to global freedom, peace and prosperity, and the African Union's Agenda 2063, as mentioned by Stephen here in the studio, for sustainable development and integration of the African continent as a whole. The organizers of the inaugural summit say, as equal partners, Korea and Africa committed to creating a future together for shared growth, sustainability and solidarity, which is also the theme of the inaugural Korea-Africa Summit. Right, and Stephen, as the founder of the NGO Africa Insight, what efforts are being made by your entity to boost greater awareness of Africa among the broader general Korean public?
Yeah, sure. So Africa Insight, founded back in 2013. So over the past decade, Africa Insight diligently has undertaken various initiatives to raise awareness and bring in new insight about continent of Africa among the general Korean public and students. And it's encouraging to see a shift in people's perceptions. So one of our flagship projects is the Seoul Africa Festival, which we started in 2016. It is the largest African cultural festival in Korea dedicated solely to African themes. We've held it 6 times so far, and the 7th event is scheduled for October this year, this festival. Additionally, we conduct the Ubuntu Africa Global Citizenship Education Program, which is certified by UNESCO for Education for Sustainable Development. This program educates diverse groups, including the general public and students, promoting a balanced and open perspective on Africa with the basic knowledges. We also run campaigns to combat discrimination and prejudice against Africa in Korea. For instance, we advocate for apology from public figures for discriminatory remarks about Africa and work to end the practice of poverty pornography, where extreme emphasizing of poverty of only a small part of somewhere in Africa used to promoting more donation, increasing. Lastly, we contribute to shaping government policies on Africa by submitting policy recommendations and providing advisory services to enhance diplomatic and public awareness strategies. So more information can be found from our website or social media channels.
What are your plans for this year after the Korea-Africa Summit? I'm sure it's going to be a very busy year for you.
Yeah, the early part of the year, we support this cultural event with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs before the summit to promoting the cultural experience and cultural heritage of African continent. Also, we submitted another policy recommendation focusing on enhancing support for African students residing in Korea for their studying opportunity, also their working experience in Korea. So the later part of this year, we will focusing on organizing the 7th edition of Seoul Africa Festival, which is planned to happen on 12th of October in Banpo Hangang Park, which is very popular area. So like any other years, we will try our best to include as many as possible African community residing in Korea, also embassy to genuinely representing Africans. So this festival is always organizing not, of course, by the Korean leading, but by African leading, so that together we're making a great festival together.
Right, indeed. And back on the Korea-Africa Summit, Professor Kim, plans are in the works to make this particular summit a regular event taking place every 4 or 5 years. What are your thoughts on this endeavor?
Making the Korea-Africa Summit a regular event could bring about numerous advantages for sure. Besides formalizing high-level exchanges similar to the Korea-Africa Summit, it could promote deeper bilateral cooperation with key nations, fostering mutual interest and expanding joint initiatives. Moreover, regular summits would facilitate cultivation of regional experts across various fields, promoting sustainable development and capacity building initiatives. Establishing a substantive and regularized Korea-Africa Summit or high-level cooperation body is increasingly seen as necessary. Leveraging platforms like KUAFEC from the Ministry of Economy and Finance, KUAFIC from the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy, and the Korea-Africa Forum or Summit by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs could effectively identify and address pertinent agenda items.
Right, indeed. Professor Kim, speaking to the Agence France Presse, which is a French international news agency prior to the Korea-Africa Summit, President Yoon Suk-yeol spoke about the importance of bolstering trade ties and of securing key minerals, as Korea is a tech manufacturing powerhouse, but it relies on over 95% of mineral imports for its production. And the Yoon administration is hoping that Africa will serve as one possible market for its mineral needs, as it needs to secure a stable supply chain given the geopolitical tensions in the region, including China and other countries. What are your thoughts on Africa serving Korea's needs of key minerals?
Definitely, they are the key actors in supply chain of minerals, the key chain. So that's one of the reasons why this summit is so important. And then, like I said earlier, our Korea is a resource-lacking country, actually. So we kind of desperately need, but it's not just, this summit should not focus on seeking minerals, but it should go with other like cooperative agendas, like shared interest, like shared growth, prosperity, solidarity, and so on. But it'll be
But shared growth, solidarity, and sustainability, as you mentioned, of course, is the theme of this inaugural summit between Korea and Africa. And as you mentioned, Professor Kim, it's really important to ensure that the focus does not rely entirely on trying to secure certain minerals, but also to ensure that there is a bilateral understanding for greater economic growth. Stephen, aside from making the summit among leaders a regular event, what types of people-to-people exchanges do you propose to keep ties active? Of course, you've shared quite a lot of potential programs that, of course, your organization is currently undertaking. But aside from those, what else do you propose?
Yeah, I think there are several ways to foster people-to-people exchange, but one of the quickest and most effective methods is to enhance cultural exchanges. Imagine hosting a K-pop concert or cultural event in various African countries, following the popularity of K-pop and K-dramas. Or conversely, if renowned Afrobeat musicians visited Korea to hold a concert or collaborated with a Korean artist, it would be spark interest and awareness about Africa among many Koreans. However, for this exchange to happen, more policies and budgetary support are needed, along with a dedicated institution to oversee such initiative. So I personally hope that organizations like us, Africa Insight, or many culture and art-related organizations, where they already try to promote this kind of people-to-people exchange, not only from Korea, but also from the African countries. If they can receive more opportunity and support, they will lead this process of people-to-people exchange. And additionally, increasing scholarships for African students to study in Korea, supporting Korean students to explore more opportunities in Africa. This will boosting academic exchange, will create another better environment for mutual understanding and cooperation.
You mentioned earlier, Stephen, how you traveled to Tanzania because of your interest in Africa as a student. Compared to back then and now, do you suppose there are more networks available to cater to Korean students interested in studying or going to Africa for experiences?
Yeah, traditionally, like usually the volunteer program from the International Development Corporation, NGO, or government agency like a Korea International Cooperation Agency, they expanded their candidate to volunteer. It's keep expand year by year. So the easiest way is still through the volunteer experience, which not only like going for the helping, but also can learn a lot of life lessons. But nowadays, like the travel opportunities or exchange opportunities is increased, and we have better information and we can easily find more information from the internet. So I think the general environment and context became much better compared to the 10, 15 years ago. So whoever the youth who is really interested to travel or doing something in Africa, I think they have a better opportunity now.
Right, and Stephen, as you're speaking, we have the president of Tanzania, Samia Suluhu Hassan, arriving at the venue of the Korea-Africa Summit. Now, she held her bilateral talks with President Yoon Suk-yeol earlier on the sidelines of this multilateral meeting, during which, according to our correspondents, there has been an agreement to offer Tanzania $2.5 billion in aid over the next 5 years. Now, this, of course, would be one way of cooperation that is between the two countries. We are covering live the arrival of the African delegations to the venue of the Korea-Africa Summit. And along with that live coverage, we also have a studio discussion where we are addressing some of the related matters as well as the broader agenda of this inaugural summit. Pundits claim the agenda can be roughly divided into 5 big objectives, the first being the strengthening of partnership, trade, investment, infrastructure, and technology transfer, which is something that our Professor Kim In-kyung here in the studio mentioned earlier. Objective is the promoting of sustainable development, of course, supporting African nations in their nurturing of economic growth, social progress, and environmental sustainability. A third objective is the encouraging of people-to-people connection, which the founder of the NGO Africa Insight here in the studio, Stephen, has been highlighting, encouraging people-to-people connection by facilitating cultural exchanges and, of course, educational programs to and from the two regions, that is, from South Korea to Africa and from Africa, of course, to South Korea. A fourth objective is the addressing of global challenges, which also is a universal agenda, the collaboration on issues such as climate change, peace, and security, especially here in this part of the world amid North Korea's persistent provocations, health, given the repercussions of the COVID-19 pandemic earlier on, as well as, of course, poverty. A fifth objective of the Korea-Africa Summit is the enhancing of diplomatic ties by building stronger political relationships and promoting mutual understanding and respect between Korea and Africa. Professor Kim, does Korea's broader engagement with Africa take it a step closer to becoming a global pivotal state?
Yes, I think so. Korea's expanded engagement with Africa undeniably places Korea closer to the status of global pivotal state. By broadening its diplomatic, economic, and development cooperation efforts in Africa, Korea showcases a dedication to a global leadership and a readiness to interact with diverse regions beyond its immense influence. As Africa gains increasing prominence on the global stage, Korea's proactive involvement not only bolsters its soft power, but also heightens its strategic importance. So by leveraging its expertise and resources to tackle key challenges facing African nations, such as infrastructure development, education, healthcare, and technology transfer, Korea is increasingly acknowledged as a reliable partner in Africa's pursuit of sustainable development. This widened engagement highlights Korea's ambition to assume a more assertive and influential role in shaping the global agenda, thus bringing it closer to the status of a pivotal state.
Africa Summit, of course, comes amid Korea's vision to become a global pivotal state, as mentioned earlier, but also amid Africa's vision for Agenda 2063. Now, this is something we touched upon earlier, but for the sake of our viewers who may be tuning in to watch our coverage right now, do tell us again a bit about the Agenda 2063.
Okay, so the Agenda 2063 is established back in 2013. We can see from 2013 to 2063 is a 50-year long-term plan. So this is aiming for the continent is achieving the 7 key goals by 2063, unitedly put their effort together. So the goal 1 is a prosperous Africa with inclusive growth and sustainable development. 2, an integrated continent based on Pan-African ideas. 3, an Africa of good governance, democracy, and respect for human rights. 4, a peaceful and secure Africa. 5, an Africa with a strong cultural identity and values. 6, an Africa driven by its people, especially women and youth. 7, an influential global player and partner. So for Korea to establish effective cooperation with Africa, aligning our effort and strategy to Africa with these internal development goal within Africa is very crucial. And as it's 2024 and nearly 40 years remain for this long-term agenda, so we have a lot of time. But so the AU has already developed PACE plan step by step, but detailed execution, monitoring, and outcome measurement are essentials. So I believe Korea can contribute to achieving and develop this Agenda 2006 by our own way of support in each aspect.
Right, of course. And simply speaking, Stephen, on a personal level, perhaps, what are your hopes for ties between Korea and Africa in the near future?
That's a big question.
It really is.
But I hope this summit can be a new open door and become a new platform which helps rediscover and reinterpret Africa, which opened, for Korean perspective, which opened viewed through the outdated stereotype, recognizing its immense potential and diversity. By embracing an open perspective and avoiding premature judgment, Africa will be like this or that, we can appreciate the remarkable change across Africa. Africa continent should also consider the unique values they can offer to Korea, and Korea should reflect on what it can learn from Africa. This mutual reflection can foster meaningful, balanced partnership. Consistent follow-up and actions are essential to ensure this summit leads to the real implementation of promises made. Continuous monitoring will help Korea and African countries develop special win-win relationship. So I'm also committed to working toward these goals at the civil society level.
Right, which is also why the Union administration is hoping that this particular summit will become a regular event taking place every 4 to 5 years to ensure, of course, a greater sense of consistency, as Stephen, you mentioned, with regard to projects that are undertaken by the two sides, of course. Professor Kim, this, of course, again, it's an impromptu question, but what are your hopes with regard to ties between South Korea and Africa in the near future?
As emerging power, African countries has huge, immense potential. So we should not lose this opportunity to make a good partnership with African countries. But we have to be very strategic.